Good afternoon and welcome back to the USTA Florida Here to Serve podcast. My name is Laura Bowen and I'm the Executive Director here at USTA Florida. Today I'm joined by three wonderful industry leaders who work for the Professional Tennis Registry, or PTR. And today's podcast is special because PTR has recently moved here to Florida in their new home base at Saddlebrook. Joining me today on the podcast is Dan Santorum, who is currently the CEO of PTR, and he's been in that position for 38 years. During his time, Dan has conducted more than 450 PTR educational workshops on 6 continents, and he's actually the only person to conduct tennis coaching workshops in all 50 U.S. states and 3 U.S. territories. Dan's also been a USTA volunteer for about 35 years, and he's served on numerous national, section, and state committees. He's a member of the Southern Tennis Hall of Fame, the Middle States Tennis Hall of Fame, and the South Carolina Tennis Hall of Fame. And for those Floridians out there, you'll be happy to know that Dan holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Business Management from, you guessed it, the University of Florida in Gainesville. Brian Parkkonen is also joining us on the podcast today. He's the Chief Operating Officer at PTR. And Brian actually started in the industry when he served as head pro and director of college placement at the Vandermeer World Class Academy, before going on to serve as director of some of the largest public and private clubs in the country. Brian eventually landed at PTR, where he has developed new courses and opportunities, including PTR's education dashboard, and he also played a key role in the development of the PTR Coach app. Brian is a graduate of the PTM program at Ferris State in his home state of Michigan. Milen Vidos is currently the PTR Director of Education and Diversity, and Milen has been playing tennis since the age of 3. She grew up in Brazil, where she started playing at her parents' tennis club, and as a junior player, she reached number 1 in Brazil. She earned a full athletic scholarship to play for Delta State University and went on to earn her Bachelor of Arts and a master's degree in sports management from that university. Milena has served in numerous positions in the industry, including as director of tennis at the Cleveland Country Club in Mississippi, where she grew both the adult and junior programs. And of course, she joined PTR in 2019 as education coordinator and eventually became PTR's Director of Education and Diversity, where she currently designs, implements, and manages PTR's education for Level 2, Level 1, and specialty courses. And she currently is spearheading the PTRW Because We Can program, which is near and dear to my heart, and it has been an absolute joy for us to be able to work with Milena on that program. I hope you enjoy this episode of the podcast where Brian, Dan, and Milena share how we can all work together here in Florida to help recruit, engage, and retain more coaches. Enjoy the pod and be sure to check out our social media channels and drop us a comment. Well, hello, PTR team. I'm so happy to have you all on the podcast today. Thank you for joining me.
It's our pleasure.
For having us.
So, I want to just kick things off. We've got, 3 people on the podcast, and I've had the joy of getting to know each of you over the last several years, but our audience may not know. So I thought maybe each of you could share a little bit about your tennis backgrounds and maybe how you came to be at PTR. And Milena, I'm going to start with you. Tell us a little bit about how you got involved in tennis and PTR.
Okay, so my dad is a tennis coach in Brazil. So as soon as I started walking, I was hanging around the tennis club with him, and I wasn't really playing tennis, but I was having fun with the ball and the racket. And then I ended up playing juniors, higher level juniors. I played some ITFs. And then I came to play college tennis in 2005. No, 2005. I'm not that young. And then I just ended up staying tennis. I didn't go to school, anything related to sports at the beginning. I was, a business major. Then I ended up staying and doing a master's degree with emphasis in sports management. And that's when I started to think maybe I want to start working with tennis. I always coached tennis on the side when I was in school. And then once I finished my master's degree, I got a full-time job as a director of tennis in a club where I went to school in Mississippi. So that's when it started. And then I actually got certified by PTR as a PTR on campus. And when I was still in school, so that's when my education side, like just really, I really wanted to learn more. So I ended up doing all the PTR courses. I think everything that they offered, I did. I started running some courses for PTR at that time too, some workshops. And then Brian and I connected at some point, and we had this discussion about maybe me joining the team. And I was really excited about it because I was very passionate about the education side of it. So joined PTR 5 years ago, and here I am. Yeah.
Well, we're very lucky that you're here. So thank you, Brian, for recruiting Milena, and we're benefiting from your business and your tennis background, Milena. So thank you very much for sharing that. Brian, so you obviously were at PTR before Milena joined. So tell us a little bit about your tennis background and how you came to PTR.
Yeah, no, definitely. Similar to Milena's, start, I started at a very early age, probably in one of the most unlikely locations you would ever think, in a very small town in Michigan called Ishpeming, Michigan. No indoor tennis facilities. Tennis, to have a career in tennis, let alone play tennis, was really that tennis is a sport. It was big, football, basketball, most importantly hockey, because it was cold 6-7 months out of the year up there. But it was just a sport that my parents had a passion for. Both of my sisters played, and I was the one that kind of tagged along, and at the age of 7 pulled a broken racket out of the garbage dumpster at the courts and started to play. And from there, it led me into going to school at Ferris State and really the PTM program, which was kind of the launching pad for me and actually the pathway to PTR for me. Because my freshman summer at Ferris, I actually did my internship at Vandermeer. So I had an opportunity to get certified first and foremost with PTR. But I also say, almost most importantly to that, is get to know and work with Dennis and just build that connection and relationship with both Dennis and Pat, which had really served me for really the rest of my career. Because as we went through school, I'll never forget my final assignment was, what is your dream job? When you finish school and you're out in your career, and what's your dream job? And I still have the sheet in my folder, but it said, my dream job would be to one day hopefully work for either PTR or be a USTA national coach. And those are my two dream jobs early on. And so now I'm living my dream job. After school, I had an opportunity of going back to Vandermeer's and then working in some of the clubs such as Midtown, Weymouth Club, and directing quite a few of those programs, both from a director standpoint and then a high performance director. And that kind of led me full circle to becoming a coach developer for PTR first. And then running a workshop during the symposium, Dan approached me and said, hey, we might have a position opening. Would you be interested in potentially pursuing this position? And you might need a little bit of time to think about it. I'll give you some time. And I said, Dan, you don't even have to let me think about it. I'm in, I'm there. So it's really exciting for me because, as I said, I'm living my dream job right now. And it's been an absolute pleasure going in my 11th year with the organization.
Awesome. Well, we're, again, very fortunate to have you. And it's clear that you do enjoy your job. Every time I see you, no matter how busy you are, you're just so happy. And it's great. It's when you see people who love what they do, it really shows. So thank you for sharing that background. That's really interesting. I love the diversity that we have throughout our tennis industry. Now, Dan, you've sort of been there the longest, and you have such a storied history in the industry. But let's just say, for those out there and listening that maybe don't know, can you talk a little bit about your tennis background and how you landed at PTR?
Yeah, well, actually, I'm probably one of the few people in the world that started playing tennis on a rainy day against the backboard. And that's because my family, my friends, the area where I grew up in Western Pennsylvania, it was football, basketball, and baseball, and nobody played tennis. And so I ended up playing on that rainy day and fell in love with the sport. And from there, I ended up playing some junior tennis and went and played #1 on my high school team. I went to the University of Florida, which was one of the best things they ever did. But the unfortunate thing is they were too good, and I didn't make the team. But no matter. In fact, I think that was a blessing because I just focused. I got a business degree from them, and then for 2 years I ended up managing an athletics store that was based in Gainesville called Athletic Attic, and I taught tennis at Charlottesville Park and Rec in Virginia. And that's where I met Dennis Vandermeer. I went to his tennis university, and it was just like an epiphany, learning from the best teacher ever. And so then fast forward, I ended up getting a job, and that's a story in itself, working for Dennis. I worked for 2 years, traveled all over the world with him, worked my way up to what they called one of the senior professionals. And then one day, the person that was running the pro shop there left to take another job. And since I had experience, Dennis offered me a job to do it part-time and still work on the court. So I said yes. And so how I got this job, one day I'm in there at lunch, just, making sure everything's going all right in the pro shop. The phone rings, it's for Dennis. And 40 years ago, the phone systems are different than today. So I had to physically go back and tell Dennis that he had a phone call. And he's on the phone, he's going, yeah, well, I think you're making a big mistake. And he hangs up the phone, and he looks at me, he says, can you bloody believe it? He says, that's the 23rd person that's turned me down to become the executive director of PTR. And I just looked at him, I said, well, geez, Dennis, I'll give it a shot. And he leaned back in his chair, and he just said, okay, mister, let's see what you can do. And here I am 38 plus years later, and still in the same position.
That's an incredible story. I don't know that
Yeah.
people know that, but that's an amazing story. And, I'm so happy you brought up Dennis because, he really is such a legend in the sport for how to teach, how to develop coaches, right? That was sort of, how he fundamentally changed the game. So that was kind of a question that I wanted to ask you, Dan. Can you talk a little bit about how Dennis's work really shaped PTR as the mission and then helped grow the coaching industry to what it is today, what we're currently experiencing?
Yeah, well, Dennis, he was part of what we used to call the Fab Four. It was Dennis, Nick Bollettieri, Vic Braden, and Peter Burwash, and they all had different niches. And Dennis's niche was that, he loved to work on coach education and work with coaches. His tennis university is legendary. I went through it, Brian went through it, and thousands of other people. And basically, he had what was called a standard method of coaching. And he and Billie Jean King actually developed it. And what went behind that is that he used to see that if he was doing a clinic and he had pros on 6 courts, all 6 pros were teaching the forehand differently. And that's very frustrating, to the people taking the clinic. It's tough to learn that way. So he developed this biomechanically efficient way to teach all the strokes. It was much more technical oriented, not very tactical like you'll see that mix today. And but it still has its place. I mean, Brian and Milena will tell you that it still resonates, and it was mainly with adults, which was what was, back in the 80s, that was more of these clinics were geared towards adults. And but he had a unique way of teaching. He had a photographic mind. He could bring 56 people into a tennis court, and after 15 minutes, he knew all 56 people's names. Wow. And so he had them in the palm of their hand, and that's what kept a lot of people, playing tennis, because of the way he taught and the way he taught teachers how to teach. The importance of names. You just can't underestimate that. He's in the International Tennis Hall of Fame, and Dennis deserved to be there. What he's done for coaching for the tennis industry is, we can't thank him enough. He's the best.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And I can tell you, as someone who has learned as an adult, that certainly benefited from standardization. And I still see that happening from time to time where, as an adult, learning the serve in particular is the hardest thing to do. And what is frustrating is when you go out there and you're taking, clinics or whatever with 4 different pros and they're all telling you to do something a different way. It really, it's really challenging, and it's been nice to see more standardization there. And I think that credit to Dennis and to all of those who have really worked hard to make it an easier process and a better process, and to you, all of you, because you coach it every day. Well, Dennis was such a legend, and obviously Hilton Head was where he was based, and it's where PTR has been based. So my next question is really for you, Brian. When you all decided that you would move away from Hilton Head, which I'm sure was a very difficult decision, can you talk a little bit about what you were looking for in a location and why ultimately you chose Saddlebrook as your new home?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And to your point on it, Laura, I mean, it's it's one of those almost bittersweet ones, right? Because we've been on Hilton Head where Dennis founded us, 48 years ago. And so for 48 years, Hilton Head has been home. It's where I really started my career early on in my career. So you look at just what Hilton Head has meant to us as an organization. And so when the board started to think about this a few years ago, the whole intent was behind how can we elevate PTR moving forward into the future? There's certain elements that Hilton Head was phenomenal for, but then there was other elements that we weren't able to maybe do as many things as we wanted to do. And so when we started to look at this whole idea of potentially relocating PTR headquarters, it really came down to what was going to be in the best interest of the members, and looking for a location that was going to provide a great laboratory for the organization, one that we can facilitate a lot of coach education. We can test and pilot different programs out in a real live setting, as well as giving the members an opportunity of having a little bit of a getaway, somewhere that was conveniently located to access and get into. We all, as I mentioned, we all love Hilton Head. I think the only challenge with Hilton Head was always getting to Hilton Head, right? So looking for the members of where could we find something where that was maybe even a little bit more efficient to getting into. And so as we started this process, we really landed on roughly 4 sites initially that we put out bids for and had started to have conversations. And then over the course of really about a year and a half, as those conversations continued to evolve, we started to narrow it down and started to see there were certain areas that may not fit as well as other areas. And so really towards the middle part of last year, we really saw that it was down to kind of the final 2 and dove into those final 2 locations. And Saddlebrook was just so great to work with. I think they were willing to see outside and look outside of the box, right? And see the bigger picture of what potentially could be possible if the 2 entities came together. And so as we continued to progress with those conversations, it was really clear that Saddlebrook was going to be the right pick for us, our next home. And getting down here now, I'm actually the first team member to get down here, and we're thrilled to be down here. I mean, it's always said, right? You want to be somewhere where you're wanted. And just the relationship early on here has been fantastic. They're excited for us to be here. We're excited. And I think the opportunities for us to move forward now as an organization are going to be really robust. And from a new education design, our members are going to be able to see a lot more products and services and support coming from us because of this move. And then giving our members just a lot more opportunities for them to, get away, but come to, Dan is coined this a few years ago, but have more of an education, get a little bit of vacation time in, but come down and get your education while you're there. So we're looking forward to seeing a lot of our members down here, and we're thrilled to be part of Team Florida now.
Yes, well, I mean, we couldn't be happier to have you all in Florida. And of course, Saddlebrook is legendary in the state as one of, the top academies for a very, very long time. You have a number of tennis courts there. And I think what might surprise some people is the location of Saddlebrook in that North Tampa area is actually a really robust and booming location in the state. The growth in that area has just in the past 10 to 15 years from a population perspective has really exploded. So a lot of people are moving there. It's definitely a high energy part of the state. And of course, and I know you all and your members will enjoy that piece of it, because you'll definitely get a sense of the population shifts that have been happening since COVID here, which is a lot more people, and a lot of them want to play sports, and tennis is, in my view, at the top of that list, because anybody of any age and ability can play. So super excited to have you. I'm glad you landed here in Florida. And Brian, look forward to coming over and visiting you in the near future. Melina, I want to turn to you next. So we've had a chance to work together, which has been such a blessing to me. And one of the things that I enjoy most about working with you is that you're just not afraid to try new things. And I think you're a change agent in our industry, which in some ways is really, really needed. Can you talk a little bit about how moving to Saddlebrook might possibly help us attract and engage more new and diverse coaches?
Yes, I think Florida is such a rich tennis area. There's so many tennis players there already, so many coaches, and it's one of the most diverse states in the US. So I think being there will help a lot, but also having our own facility where coaches can come in and we can run more events and more workshops and really bring to life our ACE program there in that location. Of course, we'll still travel around and reach coaches from outside of the state, but I think being able to be in Florida will be amazing and huge for those coaches. We will be more connected to them. And I think that connection is something that sometimes you miss a little bit, because we're, like Brian said, we're in a place where it was difficult for everybody to get. People loved going to Hilton Head. I mean, I love it here, but it's a little bit more difficult. And I think once now coaches are able to access our facilities a little bit better, we'll be able to attract much more coaches, diverse coaches, younger coaches, hopefully too. So we want to reach those coaches who don't know if they want to, work on the tennis industry. We want to see if we can get more of those young coaches joining us too. So, yeah.
And just as a follow-up, you've really been a force behind the PTRW, and we've been able to partner with you on our Women in Tennis initiative, and you've done a lot to advocate and advance more women in coaching, which again, sorely needed. What plans do you have to maybe host some more women-focused events here in Florida, and how can we as USTA Florida help you do that?
Yes, so that's a great question, because there are different programs under the PTRW umbrella, and I don't think everybody knows about it. We have the PTRW Because We Can, which you're familiar with, Laura, that we have a good amount of scholarship that we offer to women to join PTR, become level 1 certified, and go through specific sessions that most of them right now are online. They go through those sessions. They're focused on how to communicate well, how to negotiate, how to have difficult conversations and things like that. Now I would like to have those sessions more in person, at least in that area, and attract people, because I think the connection that the women have when they're together in person it's different. It's nice to be able to see each other through the internet, online, but being in person, we notice that the connections and the networking that the women do, it's much bigger and much more impactful. We also have these 2 other programs, which is the PTRW Empowering Women. Those are just one-off sessions that we have in different locations. And it's a 3-hour session. It's how do we empower ourselves and empower other women, because sometimes we're not very good at that. But just how can we, work together to empower each other? So that's another session that I plan on having hopefully once every quarter here in Florida. And then, they're in Florida. I'm not there yet. I'll be there towards the end of the year. And then there's another one. It's our brand new program, which is the PTRW Because We Need Change. And we just launched that last year. I think you were there, Laura, actually, at the US Open. And that one is we're trying to get more directors of tennis, directors of rackets, like just people in leadership positions who can come in and understand why there's a lack of women in the industry, and why do we need more women, and how do we work together. And just like, we have a discussion before, you and I, on we need to reach the women a little bit more. We're a little bit more quiet, and sometimes we don't put ourselves out there. So how do this people in leadership position can actually understand that a little bit better? So we're super excited about this new program and would love to partner up with USTA Florida to bring it, have a couple this year here in Florida. And I think the way you can help and we can help each other is really recruiting more women and reaching out to them. We have a huge database of women who are already certified, but we're trying to look for those women who want to be certified, maybe are not sure about if they want to be there, if they want to work with tennis. So that's something I think USTA Florida can really help us, because you have those contacts in the area. We're a little bit new in the area, so I think that would be something that we can work together and try to make a difference.
Absolutely. We've been able, through our community coach program the last couple of years, is really reach a lot of diverse and women coaches in the state just by going out and keeping it simple and saying, hey, do you want to do a red ball program or do something in the community? And so we've been able to reach much more diverse people than we have previously. And I think that opens the door to say, how do we get them more involved in these other opportunities to coach or to learn or to grow or become leaders? So excited to really partner and bring those two things more together with you all here in the state. Dan, that brings me back to you. One of the things that excites me the most, to be honest, is that we have USTA at the national campus. We have USPTA here in Orlando, and now we have PTR at Saddlebrook. So all three organizations are based here in Florida. I'm not going to say we're the best section, but I mean, I am biased, of course. So my question for you all, do you see having all the organizations together geographically as a positive, as a challenge, or maybe a little bit of both?
I mean, I see it as a positive, but I tend to be a glass half full type of person. So, I mean, the fact of the matter is, Laura, when you came to the International Rackets Conference from Orlando to Saddlebrook, it's about an hour drive. So one of the things when we have meetings, it's typically over Zoom because, we are in Hilton Head and so forth. And now we can take that hour plus drive and go to the USTA National Campus and have those meetings face to face. And I definitely think that's a positive. And also, as Brian kind of alluded to, work with the USTA on certain educational things that we could do at the campus as well. They've got a really good team with their education, and so it's definitely a positive to be in the same state, and we're looking forward to seeing more of our friends at the USTA and USPTA. And I will say, Brian Dillman is new to the USPTA, and you might have seen the interview that I did with him for RSI Magazine, and it's important that we're all about tennis, and whether you're PTR or USPTA, it's about the coaches. And so if we can do some things together that are going to benefit the coaching industry, we're all for that.
Yeah. And I mean, I was fortunate enough to do a podcast with Brian, a few weeks ago, and similar response that, we have a lot of opportunity to bring coaches into the game, and that's what we're all trying to do, and eventually grow tennis. So it's really nice to kind of hear that sort of rising tide lifts all boats mentality going forward, because I really do believe that. I mean, I've seen it here in Florida. I think, the more we can get people playing, the more everybody wins. So I'm personally really excited, glad y'all are here, and just super happy to be able to work with everybody. And those face-to-face, agree with you, Dan. It's so important to sit and talk to people face-to-face. And I did see Brian at the PTR symposium, and that was nice to see. Brian was over there, and Ramona as well, which was nice, because it's nice to have both Ramona and Milena as female leaders in this coaching space, which is, again, a good example of how we set, if you can't see it, you can't be it. And now we see that we have two really great female leaders, on coaching education, which is wonderful.
And, Laura, that's the first time that both organizations have been together at one of the industry events. And so I think that shows that moving forward, we're going to work together. And the USTA has definitely put a lot of emphasis on coach education, and we work very closely with their team and have a great relationship with in fact, Lou Scheer and Craig Morris came to our board meeting and talked about working closer together, and we look forward to doing that. They've got a great team.
Well, that's actually a good segue. Thank you, Dan, for teeing up my next question for Milena and Brian. You know, coaching is kind of a hot topic in the industry right now. I think everybody kind of agrees we don't have enough coaches. And one of you, I don't know if it was Brian or Milena, mentioned the idea that we need more directors of tennis. So we need more people running, you know, facilities, clubs, particularly in the public space, which is I'm acutely aware of. So what do you think is working well in the industry right now? And then what do you think we need to change or do differently to be able to serve the next generation of coaches and players? And maybe Milen, I'll start with you and then go over to you, Brian.
Yeah, I think we have a lot of great education available in the industry right now, and it's never been so available to the coaches. So I think that benefits the athletes that we're getting in touch with. So that part, I think it's being amazing because the organizations are working together. Like you said, USTA have some education, PTR has education, and it's really accessible to the coaches if they want to, you know, to get into the industry and to learn more and to improve how, you know, improve their how they are. What I would change, I think I think in the US it would be really important to have all coaches having certification would be mandatory. I think that would be something that we're far away from, but in my opinion, something that is really important, just because you see, I'm from Brazil, so all different countries, you see that you have to be certified to be able to teach anywhere, public facilities, clubs. And I think here in the US is something that we lack at the moment. I know it's a huge country and it's something that is not as easy sometimes to accommodate, but I think if we get there, that we know our athletes are in good hands. We have good professionals. They are safely approved. We know all of that when they're certified. When they're not, we don't know where they learn everything from, where do they bring all the teaching methods. We don't know if they're, you know, if they're accurate or not. So in my opinion, what needs to change is that. And I know it's a lot of work, and I know there's a lot that needs to be done to accomplish that, but I think we can get there.
Awesome. Brian, what are your thoughts? What's working well, and what do you think we need to change or do differently?
Yeah, I think, and just building off of, you know, Milena's statement, is the thing that our sport really kind of has a benefit of is we have incredibly passionate people within our sport. I mean, I think that first and foremost is one of the home run pieces. It is a great career. It's a great sport. And so you look at, you know, there's always those three categories. Is it a job? Is it a career? Is it a calling? I think we've got a lot of individuals in really our industry that are more at that calling standpoint, which is awesome, because those are the individuals that you want to have delivering the sport. Dan alluded to it earlier, you know, if they have a great first experience, and Dennis was one of the best at that, providing that great first experience, we're going to retain those athletes in our sport for years to come. But if they don't have a great experience, you know, okay, well, I tried it, put it down, onto the next sport. And so I think that's the first thing that we're doing really well, is the individuals that we're attracting into our sport are incredibly passionate. They're excited about this sport. They really do view this as more of their calling, not just I'm clocking in, clocking out. And I think that's a huge bonus to it. That could also be, you know, what's not working well is we need more of those individuals into our sport, right? So we're getting the right individuals, but we just need larger numbers and larger volumes of those individuals to come into our sport. And there's a couple of barriers right now of entry into our sport. And I think it really, I think Simon Gale at the national campus has done a phenomenal job. And Joe Wallen's right there with them in terms of just having a vision of creating a model that could really be plug and play. And yes, there's some tweaks if I'm at a country club, private club, a commercial club, municipality, but overall, this mindset of, look, the 7-day work week is a challenge, right? The grind it out, you know, I came up through that, right? I was on the court 7 days a week, you know, 40 to 50 hours, sometimes 60-hour weeks on the court. And I loved it. And that was just something that, you know, I didn't think anything different of. But looking at this next generation of coaches that are coming in, we just have to be a little bit more aware of that work-life balance and how does our sport modify that work environment to really attract those younger professionals. And as I mentioned, Simon and Joe, they've done a great job of just modifying what a different work environment in terms of hours, day commitment could really look like. I think that's going to be a huge component to helping get younger coaches and new coaches into our sport. The last piece is leveraging, all these coaches that I referenced that they view this as their calling, leveraging their expertise a little bit more effectively in the standpoint of mentoring that next generation to create that director's pathway, Laura, as you alluded to. I think oftentimes we get, in positions where, I like to hold on to what I know and maybe not share it with as many people, but if we can really embrace that whole spirit of mentoring and looking at, hey, I've had a great career. Tennis has provided such a great life for me. I want to hand this over and hand this down to that next generation and really just share and showcase what the sport has done for me and best practices. Really a strong feeling that I have is if we can really embrace that mentoring a little bit more from all of our senior leadership within the sport and really helping to cultivate that next generation coming in, that's going to be a huge benefit and component to us growing the sport in the future and getting just more coaches into the industry that we all want.
Yeah, I mean, well said. And I appreciate you and Milena both addressing while we would love to say, hey, every coach needs to be certified until we have enough of them, right? That's sort of the issue right now. And also a clear pathway to the public park space. And I think the thing that's, often the elephant in the room that I think I caught the end of maybe Doug Cash's presentation at the PTR symposium is compensation. And it's the elephant in the room that doesn't really get addressed, that because you don't have enough individuals in the marketplace that, just like anything, whether you're an accountant or anywhere else, whatever your profession is, you're going to gravitate toward the higher paying roles, which tend to be at that country club, private club type of environment. And the public parks are really, really struggling right now to actually have people who have it as their calling. So to your point, Brian, and, the campus is a great location, but it doesn't really mimic your average public park where you can't really set those types of schedules because you don't have enough staff to actually do that. And the independent contractor model. So it's so much more complicated how the marketplace works. And I think what's exciting to me, hopefully, about where we're going as a group is that we can get in a room and tackle some more of the complexities of the issue. Because I think oftentimes we look at it as, oh, it's just easy, do mentoring and do training, and then it'll automatically happen. But just like women in tennis, there's some other complicating factors there that will take time to really change the dynamics. So I hope 25 years from now, we see tennis professionals choosing public park, right, to actually work in and grow and develop. That's what my hope would be. And so I want to ask you all that question as the last question on the podcast. My hope is that 25 years from now, tennis professionals, directors of tennis, really see the public park space as something that they want to own and be part of. So what do each of you hope to see 25 years from now? What will the professional tennis coach in America be like, and what will they want to do? What's your 25-year crystal ball vision? And I think for this one, maybe I'll start with you, Dan, and then go to Brian and Milena. You can close it out.
Well, with this AI, I just hope we're not replaced by robots, 25 years from now. But I guess, you just talked about the Park and Rec, and I mentioned earlier, that's how I got my start. If it wasn't for Charlottesville Park and Rec, I probably wouldn't be, talking with you right now, because you have to have a start. And so I want to say kudos to you, Laura, and USTA Florida for the program that you've started, where you now have 4, and probably more, you're going to start 4 public parks that you've embraced and have hired people and have gotten PTR to come in and do PTR certification workshops. I think that's the model, to get us to the next 25 years, to get more coaches, because 70% they say 70% of the population of tennis players, they play in the parks, and that's not where our pros are. As you mentioned earlier, they're at the country clubs. That's the high paying job, and then the commercial clubs, and so those public parks, they're at a disadvantage. I think we just flip it and say, this is where you get your start, and Brian mentioned how the USTA, which is a public facility, they've got a great program, and Dennis Vandermeer was open to the public too. And he brought so many teaching pros into the industry. And I think that's what the USTA is doing there with Simon and Joe and so forth. We need more. It just can't be one. It's got to be multiple all through the state. So I hope some of the other sections will take a page out of what you've done. I know Pacific Northwest has.
Yeah, there's a couple that predate us that were doing this. Pacific Northwest was doing their parks program long before we started, and that's sort of what inspired us. And I know there are other sections that are. I think Mo Valley is just looking to operate one now, and which is interesting because that was operated by a commercial club that now is leaving. And so that's kind of a fascinating flip. There's a lot happening in this space right now, and I do think the sections are in a good position to provide that service with support from the industry and organizations like PTR. Thank you so much, Dan. I didn't pay you to say that, but I appreciate you giving us a shout out. It's been one of our most, fantastic things that we've done as an organization is to take on the facilities, and it's also been the hardest. And I think I've said that several times. It was new, it was different, and it's like a Rubik's Cube to kind of figure out, and they're all different. It's all like a different Rubik's Cube each time, but that's what kind of makes it fun and interesting. Brian, where do you see it in 25 years? What will tennis professionals be like then?
This is an exciting question, right? Because this is the we kind of get to build this out, and my first piece is my hope for the tennis coach of 25 years from now to be very dynamic and open to new approaches, and by that what I mean is embracing change and looking for new ways of introducing the sport, specifically to young people. We had an opportunity of sitting down with one of the creators of EA Sports Madden, which is one of the largest video games. And it was one of the most revealing conversations for me because her comments, we've always heard tennis coaches say, we're competing with video games. And her comment was, we're not competing. You're not competing with video games because tennis can do the same exact thing that we do to create a video game. It's just thinking outside the box and looking at, hey, sometimes you're going to have people that are interested in gathering, some are interested in competing, some are interested in completing tasks. Those are all things that we can create on the tennis court. And so looking forward, I think that the coach 25 years from now really embraces change, and the lesson and the clinic of the future is very dynamic. It's very engaging. It's utilizing technology. It's bringing pieces in from outside of the court to really make it feel like this total immersive, inclusive experience on the court that, fulfills. They're getting fitness, they're having the social element, they're getting to meet new people. And at the end of the day, they're learning the sport that can, be a lifetime. And obviously, as Brian Hainline has said, helps you live longer. We all like that. But I think that's the biggest thing is coaches really fully embracing technology and implementing technology to just heighten the overall experience and really the success of the athletes that are going to be coming through our doors 25 years from now.
Such a great observation. When you think about Top Golf starting 25 years ago, that now 25 years later, you go to the Drive Shacks and the Top Golfs and all of that. And that wasn't adopted immediately, but that the idea that technology and immersive experiences, things like NASCAR has done with their ability to create these, I forget what they call them, but basically you can sit in an actual module and you can race on any track that they have. And some of the things that the other sports are really doing, I think is exciting. And I love that idea of how do we be more open to that and having more of a dynamic experience, because 25 years from now, there'll be kids that aren't even born today and they're going to expect something totally different. And hopefully we won't be robots, like Dan said. Hopefully we'll actually be humans. All right, Milena, we're going to close it out with you. What do you see the professional tennis coach looking like or doing 25 years from now?
So my hope is kind of building on something that Brian mentioned, is that the industry will be a little bit more adaptable. So to the new generation that is coming in, again, 60 hours a week seems a lot for some of the new generation coaches, and then adapting so we can have more diverse coaches as well. And my second thing is building on it, is having more women in the industry, because right now we it's a passion of mine, but it's also something that is needed, I think, to have that different perspective of female coaches out there. So hopefully we're about a little over 26% on the PTR side of female coaches, and we just want to keep growing that to be able to, in 25 years, we would hope we're close to 50-50, maybe something that I like to be optimistic, but yeah, that's something that I would love to see in 25 years or sooner.
Yes, I'd love to see that in our industry as a whole, that, we have women leaders sort of at the table, being able to contribute to the growth in so many ways, and coaching being, one of the leading pillars on that. So thank you, Milena. Thank you all for joining the podcast today. So insightful. And again, we've just truly enjoyed being able to partner with you, and can't wait to have you all at Saddlebrook. And maybe we'll do this again in a year leading up to your next symposium, and see kind of all the fun things we've been able to do together and where our industry is then. So thank you all for joining me today.
Thank you.
Thanks, Laura.
Thanks, Laura.
That's all for this episode of USTA Florida's Here to Serve podcast. I hope you enjoyed the topic. Please check our social media channels for more ways to engage with USTA Florida during our 75th anniversary year. And for more upcoming topics, dates, and episodes of the pod, visit USTAFlorida.com/here to serve.